Hey, good morning, everyone. Morning warm up here. Let me ask you this. Have you ever felt overwhelmed? Many times people say they're overwhelmed, and they're not necessarily overwhelmed, but there's kind of three areas that maybe that if they investigated a little bit, they would find that they could get through whatever it is that they feel so overwhelmed with. And the challenge is, and I'm guilty of this as well, is that when we're feeling so overwhelmed, we're living in what we call a reactionary state. And it's really difficult to make really great decisions and move forward, have forward momentum in a reactionary state. So I'm going to use a little acronym here, and this comes from Brendon Burchard. You may be familiar with him. The acronym is PIT, P-I-T, and these are the three things that we might be lacking, right, when we feel overwhelmed. So the first one is simply this, is plan. On any given day, do you have a plan, right? Have you looked at your day and say, hey, this is my plan for today. This is when I'm getting up. This is when I'm doing this. This is when I'm doing this. This is when I'm doing that. Or do you just consistently live reactionary? Meaning you just kind of, well, I hope today goes well, right? Not really sure what's going to happen, but I hope today goes well. If you're doing that on a consistent basis, you're overwhelming your brain because your brain is constantly having to problem solve and figure things out because it doesn't know, right? As opposed to a plan, hey, here's my plan. And so many times when people are feeling overwhelmed, say, hey, just plan today. Just get through today, and then tomorrow, plan tomorrow, and then plan the next day, right? You don't have to think way out into the future, just plan. So that's number one. People typically lack a plan for the day. Number two, in the word pit, the I is identity. Many times, the things that they're overwhelmed with, they haven't actually stopped and actually seen their self, visualized their self being successful at it or achieving that thing, right? And so what happens is if you don't see it, right, what you imagine, you create. I want you to think about that again. What you imagine, you create. So if you're sitting here stifled because you don't even see yourself making that happen, right? You can't vividly imagine it and think about it. You only see the opposite of that. Well, it's going to be too hard. Well, I'm not really sure. Well, I'm afraid of that. I have fear. I don't know. I've never done that before, right? Instead of saying, yep, I haven't ever done it before, but I can visually see myself seeing it happen. And I can write down an affirmation about being successful about doing it. And I can start having vivid imagination about the fact that I'm having success with it. So the problem many times we're feeling overwhelmed is our identity. Our identity is not the identity of the person that's succeeding. It's the identity of the person who's afraid to succeed, right? So got to have a plan. Got to vividly imagine that new identity of that person being successful in doing that, right? And then the last one, and I got to tell you the last one in my opinion is probably the most important one, is time, and specifically time blocking. I think Brendon Burchard says that the average American spends roughly 4 hours a day on TV. I think it's 2 hours a day on social media. Folks, that's 6 hours a day. And if you really look at it and boil it down, we're losing about a 40-hour work week just to distractions because we're not willing to manage, not so much manage our time, but facilitate time to be focused time that allows us to have productivity during those time blocks where we have single tasking that's going on, we eliminate distractions, and we time block our day. So my last little piece here is how many of you successfully time block? And what's interesting is if you're time blocking, then most cases, guess what you have? You have a plan. And if you have a plan and you're time blocking, most likely you have that identity of that person that you want to become because that plan is based in that new identity. So think about that. So are you falling, right, captive to the pit? Plan, identity, time, specifically time blocking. Think about that. And we cover this stuff when we do coaching. We go through these things, and there's stuff that I always have to remind myself. Hey, you know what? Because I sometimes do feel overwhelmed, and when I do feel overwhelmed, I have to say, hey, is my plan in place? Am I really vividly imagining my identity, and am I successfully time blocking? All right, everybody, hey, make it a great day. Be awesome. Help somebody.